Okay, let's talk about the SAT, and we're going to be talking about SAT mathematics here in this particular video. So what I have is a kind of a little pop quiz, a little practice problem that you should definitely be able to do if you are really going for top scores on SAT. Now, before we get going, I'm assuming that you are a high school student preparing for this, so that's fantastic. So you're probably, already currently taking math classes, most likely, and you're studying this, and you're very busy, I'm sure. A little bit about myself: I'm a middle and high school math teacher. I've been teaching for many, many years and done a lot of tutoring through the years for the SAT and ACT. And these are challenging exams, no doubt. In general, the best approach I can always recommend to do the best you can on the SAT and the ACT is one, really know your stuff from your classes. Okay, so if you're taking you're taking algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, maybe pre-calculus, you got to really know this stuff well. But that's not enough. Okay, but that's your foundation, that's your starting point. And I think a lot of students, what they do is they go to step 2 and they'll get themselves like an SAT book study guide, and they'll just take practice tests and etc. And that's important as well. That's really important to be taking practice tests and knowing the strategies and time management, all that stuff. But if you don't have this foundation, this super strong foundation in mathematics, you can have all this tactics and strategies and down as you want, but you're not going to know from a mathematics standpoint what's going on in a particular problem. So if you feel like you are not, somewhat unsure about your current level of math skills, then you really want to work on this. And obviously, you're going to have to do this other part as well. It's a lot of effort from most people to go in and get top scores. But as you know, top scores are the key to, getting into great schools, the key to getting into scholarships. It's worth the effort, and it takes a lot of work to get top SAT scores. Now, of course, even those things that we see in the news, hey, this person got a perfect score. Listen, that person also had to work very hard, on it. Maybe a small, tiny percentage of people might get lucky on a SAT or ACT in terms of getting a great score, but getting lucky and hope, whatnot, is not a strategy. So again, a little bit back about myself. Teach middle school math, high school math. Been doing it for a long, long time. I also offer an SAT math test prep course. Really is going to go back and strengthen all your core skills that you need to really be super strong at in order to be ready for the SAT. So if you think you're interested in that, I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video. So let's move on to this problem. Okay, so I'm going to obviously solve it here, but before I do, I want to give you an opportunity to pause the video and check it out. So let me just tell you very briefly what's it about, and then I'll give you a chance to solve it, and then we'll talk about it. So it's I to the 35. So if you're not sure what this is, we're talking about an imaginary number. Okay, so an imaginary number. This is something that you likely probably have learned in maybe like your Algebra 2 level kind of course. So yeah, definitely something that you very well could see on the SAT. Okay, definitely imaginary numbers you will see on the SAT, but you very well could see a problem like this. So I want you to simplify and tell me the value for I to the 35th power. Okay. Okay, so let's just kind of start with some basic concepts. What is I? What's the definition of I? Okay. Well, the definition of I is the square root of -1. So hopefully you know what that is, right? So what I can do is saying, okay, if I, this imaginary part of a complex number, is equal to square root of -1. Now, by the way, if you're lost and you're like, oh yeah, imaginary numbers, complex numbers, yeah, I kind of remember something about that. Well, then obviously this is an area you're going to need to review. This is critical stuff because when we're solving different polynomial equations, quadratic equations, you can get complex and imaginary roots. So this is not just trivial, kind of like, oh, I don't really need to know this. You absolutely need to know about imaginary numbers for sure. Okay, so an imaginary, the part, this I is its definition is the square root of -1. So if I think about, well, what's I squared? Well, I squared is going to be -1 squared, the square root of -1 squared, or -1. Okay. Now let's take a look at see what I to the third power is. Now I'm going to get to this here in a second, but let's just get some foundational work down. Well, I can say, well, I to the third power is the same thing as I squared times I. Okay, because I squared times I, or I to the first, is what? I cubed, because the bases are the same. I'm going to add the exponents. So I know what I squared is, right? I squared is the square root of negative 1. All right, so I squared is negative 1. Okay, and then I right here is just the square root of negative 1, or just I, right? So I to the third power is negative 1 times I, or just a negative I. Okay, so hopefully it's, you're kind of following along. You're saying, okay, I got this. Now, if we know these parts right here, this is going to make this much easier to evaluate. What I'm definitely not going to do is go and be like, okay, I to the 35th power. Let's see, I times I times I, and you're going to do this 35 times. We don't need to do that. A smart way of doing that is this. We can go I squared. Okay. Now I'm going to use my properties of exponents here to help me out. Okay, I squared to the 17th power is what? Okay, hopefully, yeah, you remember that it's going to be equal to, let's see here, I to the 34th. Okay, so if I want to write I to the 34th, I can write it as I squared to the 17th power. This is a little trick that you definitely want to keep in mind when you're working with imaginary numbers. It comes in really handy. Okay, so I squared to the 17th is the same thing as I to the 34th. So I'm like, okay, so if I want to figure out what I to the 35th is, I can say, well, that can be I to the 34th times I to the first is equal to I to the 35th power. So I know that this right here is equal to I to the 34th. So I have I squared to the 17th power, and now I just need one other I, okay, because this is the same thing as I to the 34th times one I. This is going to be equal to the I to the 35th power, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so now I need to know what is I squared to the 17th power. So let's go over here, and remember, I squared is equal to negative 1. So I'm taking negative 1, okay, and I'm taking it to an odd power. So it's obviously 17 is an odd number. And let's just look at some patterns here. If I take I and I take it to an even power, like I squared or I to the 4th, what's this going to be equal to? Okay, just think about it. I squared is what? That's going to be a positive 1. Okay, I to the 4th power is going to be negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is also going to be positive 1. So negative 1 to an even power is going to be a positive 1, and vice versa, negative 1 to an odd power is going to be a negative 1. And you can look at, I cubed, I to the 7th, just to kind of prove that. But this is something you want to definitely keep in mind. So here, if I have I squared, which is the same thing as negative 1 to an odd power, okay, what's this going to be equal to? Well, that's just going to be equal to a negative 1. All right, and I'm taking that negative 1 times I, so that's just negative I, and that's going to be what I to the 35th is equal to. So if you have a calculator like a TI-83 or TI-84, some other kind of nice scientific calculator, you should be able to use these functions in there, imaginary numbers. You can go in there and find the I button and take it to the 35th power, and you'll see that you'll get negative I, okay, as your answer. But anyways, good little exercise and review and definition of I. You might be saying, well, okay, that's great, but what's the point of this? Well, the point of this is to make sure you understand the definition of an imaginary number and how to work with properties of exponents and how to solve problems by kind of using some reverse engineering. So use these properties to make our life easier and just recognizing some patterns. This is all important stuff, and good strategies, good thinking that's definitely going to help you on the SAT. Okay, so let's call this video a wrap. Again, if you are interested in learning more from me, I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video to my SAT math prep course. Super comprehensive, like my best work, all kind of putting together a lot of material there to help you get ready for the SAT. Also, I hope you consider subscribing to my channel. I literally have hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel. I've been on YouTube for many, many years. I love to post math videos all the time. So a lot of stuff there that can help you out. If you enjoyed this video, I definitely appreciate a thumbs up and leave me some feedback. Are you sure that you're going for the SAT? Are you looking at the ACT as well? Is the college that you're going for require the SAT, or they prefer the SAT? All these are factors that you want to consider, and you don't want to, if you're not sure, by the way, whether you want to do the SAT or ACT, if you have an option there, you should evaluate that pretty seriously, because I think it's much more challenging for students to study for both the SAT and ACT at the same time and be taking both of those tests. A lot of students do that, and that's fine. But if you can kind of narrow your focus down to one test, because they are different, I think obviously, I think you can go further if you kind of just stick to one test. But they're both good tests. They both have their pros and cons for people. So figure out which one you need to go for your particular college, and then the one that you seem to perform the best at. And that's why, one other quick thing before I end this video, that's why if you're getting ready for the SAT, your PSATs and SATs, all this stuff, it's the sooner you start on this, like your sophomore year, even like your freshman year might be a little bit too early in high school, but the sooner the better, because it does take time to really get the best results. But with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best on your college entrance exam on the SAT. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.